You can sleep for 9 solid hours, spend your entire Sunday doing absolutely nothing, and still wake up on Monday morning feeling like you just outran a bear.
Yeah, it's that classic Sunday scaries feeling, but amplified.
Exactly. And if the math of, hours rested just isn't matching up with your daily energy levels, it's really because your exhaustion isn't a scheduling problem.
Right, it's not about time management.
No, it's a biological alarm system that literally refuses to turn off. And I think that's why we're here today. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to getting into this.
Me too,
Yeah.
because, we constantly try to spreadsheet our way out of burnout. We look at our calendars, we subtract the hours we worked from the hours we slept, and we just expect the energy to magically balance out.
But it never does, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're dealing with a nervous system that is fundamentally stuck in this defensive posture, time off does not equal recovery.
Wow, time off does not equal recovery.
Yeah, because your body is technically resting on the couch, but your underlying neurobiology is bracing for impact.
That distinction really changes everything. It shifts the blame away from our time management skills or lack thereof and puts it directly onto our biology.
Which is incredibly validating for a lot of people to hear.
It is, and that is exactly our mission for this deep dive today.
Mm.
We are unpacking nervous system dysregulation, which is a term that is fundamentally reshaping how we talk about modern wellness and integrative care.
It really is everywhere right now.
It is. So to you listening, if you have been feeling emotionally brittle, cognitively foggy, or just completely unable to bounce back from the smallest, most minor stressors, we're going to look really closely at the machinery underneath those feelings.
Because we're looking at this landscape of exhaustion, it requires a much deeper level of physiological literacy. We can't just life hack our way out of this.
Yeah.
Today, we want to explore the specific biological mechanisms of chronic stress. We need to look at how a prolonged state of defense actually alters your emotional wellness and your cognitive clarity.
And most importantly, I think we want to shift the conversation away from that aggressive, fix yourself self-improvement culture.
Absolutely. Away from the biohacking and towards sustainable, grounded recovery.
So let's start with the baseline architecture, because the nervous system isn't the enemy here. Right? It's a brilliant, highly adaptive surveillance network.
It's meant to keep us alive.
Right. I like to think of it like an emergency sprinkler system in a high-rise building. It's a life-saving mechanism meant to trigger only when there's an active roaring fire.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
You put the fire out, the sprinklers turn off, and then, you clean up the water, the system goes back to sleep.
But the issue is that the biological hardware running that sprinkler system evolved for a completely different environment. We are walking around with ancient hardware.
Ancient hardware running modern software.
Exactly. Your brain relies on the amygdala to assess threats, and it strongly prioritizes immediate physical danger. But modern society has essentially hijacked that system.
How so? Give me an example of how that hijacking actually happens in a normal day.
Well, think about when you're scrolling through a really fast-paced social media feed. Your eyes are darting rapidly, taking in these fragmented, high-contrast pieces of information.
Right, just flicking through reels or whatever.
Yeah. And neurologically, that rapid eye movement, that specific optic flow, it mimics the exact visual pattern of scanning the horizon for predators.
Oh, wow. Wait, really? So we are sitting completely safely on our couches?
Under a cozy blanket, maybe drinking tea?
Right, but we are physically feeding our brains the visual cues of being hunted.
Precisely. Your amygdala perceives that visual input, and then you combine that with the psychological pressure of, say, a flooded inbox or just the chronic uncertainty of the news.
The constant pinging of notifications.
Yeah, the pinging. And it completely bypasses your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical, rational part of your brain. It just floods your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline.
Because it thinks there's a tiger in the living room.
Exactly. And because you're experiencing this continuous low-grade pressure rather than a temporary physical threat that you can run away from, the system never gets the biological signal that the fire is out.
The sprinklers just keep running.
The sprinklers are constantly soaking the building.
So what does that constant neurochemical flooding actually do to the physical body over time? We aren't just talking about feeling a little jittery after too much coffee.
No, not at all. It creates what clinical researchers call a massive allostatic load.
Allostatic load. Okay, unpack that for me.
Basically, it's the physical wear and tear on your organs, your tissues, and your neural pathways from chronic stress exposure. It's the water damage from the sprinklers.
Ah, okay, the long-term damage.
Right. When your system is continuously flooded with these stress hormones, neuroplasticity actually starts to work against you.
Wait, really? Because we always hear about neuroplasticity as this amazingly positive thing, like rewiring your brain for success.
It is amazing, but it's neutral. It adapts to whatever you feed it. So under chronic stress, the amygdala, the threat center, actually enlarges. It gets stronger, making you much more reactive to threats.
So you get better at finding danger.
Yes, while the hippocampus, which helps regulate memory and emotion, physically shrinks, your whole baseline shifts.
That is terrifying, honestly.
It's sobering. You lose your vagal tone, which is basically your nervous system's ability to seamlessly transition back to a state of calm. You lose the brakes.
And I imagine that physiological shift explains why this doesn't look the exact same for everyone, right? Because when the system's architecture starts to buckle under that allostatic load, it fractures into different responses.
It absolutely does.
So I want you, the listener, to kind of consider your own daily rhythms here, because clinical data points to two highly distinct manifestations of this dysregulation. Let's talk about the first one, the hypervigilant state.
Yeah, the hypervigilance state. This is when your sympathetic nervous system is essentially trapped in mobilization. It's stuck on the on switch.
What does that look like physically?
The physiological markers here are a highly elevated resting heart rate, very shallow chest breathing, and an overproduction of cortisol that completely disrupts your natural circadian rhythms.
So this is that classic wired but tired feeling.
Exactly. It's lying in bed at midnight, feeling physically exhausted in your bones, but your brain is aggressively reviewing some minor social interaction you had 3 years ago.
Oh, I know that feeling intimately. It's like your system is treating relaxation as a vulnerability.
That's exactly how the brain sees it. It is an absolute inability to surrender to rest because your neuroception, which is your subconscious threat detection system, is misinterpreting a quiet, dark room as a dangerous environment.
Because if you're in the wild and a predator is nearby, lowering your guard to go to sleep is literally fatal.
Right. Your biology is applying that exact ancient survival logic to your modern bedroom.
Okay, let me push back on this a little bit, or at least introduce some friction here.
Sure.
If the hypervigilant state is the body actively mobilizing to fight or flee, what happens when we look at the second phase of dysregulation? The shutdown response.
The freeze response.
Right, because if this is all an evolutionary survival mechanism, why does the shutdown state feel so inherently destructive? I mean, shouldn't a biological defense mechanism make us feel protected rather than profoundly depressed, heavy, and cognitively foggy?
That is such a good question, and it really gets to the core paradox of nervous system dysregulation. It feels destructive because you are conscious while your body is essentially simulating death.
Whoa. Simulating death.
Yes. When mobilization fails, meaning when that fight or flight energy cannot resolve the chronic stress of modern life, the nervous system deploys its absolute last resort.
It gives up.
It activates the dorsal branch of the vagus nerve, which drops you into extreme immobilization.
So it just hits the brakes completely.
It cuts the power to the entire building. In the wild, think about a possum. If an animal knows it cannot outrun a predator, it collapses and plays dead.
Oh, right. Playing possum.
Its heart rate plummets, its metabolic rate drops to the floor, and it even releases endogenous opioids to numb the physical pain of an impending attack.
That's intense.
Yeah.
But how does that translate to a modern human sitting at a desk?
When a human being enters this dorsal vagal shutdown due to, say, chronic emotional or occupational stress, the biological markers are nearly identical.
Seriously.
Yes. Blood flow is actually physically diverted away from the prefrontal cortex to conserve energy for the vital organs.
That completely reframes the whole concept of brain fog for me. It's not a failure of focus or, a lack of willpower.
No, not at all.
It is a successful systemic diversion of blood flow away from the cognitive centers of your brain. Your body is doing it on purpose.
Yes. And that is exactly why traditional cognitive therapies alone often fall so short for people experiencing severe burnout or shutdown.
Because they're trying to talk to a part of the brain that's currently unplugged.
Exactly. You cannot simply rationalize with a biological system that is currently playing dead to survive a perceived predator.
Right. If I'm stuck in dorsal vagal shutdown, telling me to just reframe my mindset or, think positive thoughts, it's neurologically impossible. The prefrontal cortex is offline.
It's like trying to update the software on a computer that is entirely unplugged from the wall. The screen is black. You have to plug it in first.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And I think this perfectly explains the massive explosion of interest we're seeing right now in somatic awareness and bottom-up processing across integrative care.
Yes, that whole movement is rooted in this exact science. We are finally realizing that intervention has to happen at the level of the physical body before the mind can even participate in the conversation.
Because we have to speak the language of the nervous system.
Right, which operates purely on sensation, rhythm, and safety. You have to signal physical safety to the brainstem before you can access the logic of the neocortex.
Which brings us to this massive paradigm shift in how we handle our well-being today. Because once we recognize these signs, whether you lean toward that wired hypervigilant anxiety or you lean toward the foggy, immobilized shutdown, the immediate cultural instinct is to just eliminate everything.
The urge to retreat.
Exactly. We think, I need to eliminate all stress. I need a zero-stress job, a perfectly quiet life. I need to move to the woods and have zero friction.
Which is completely unrealistic, and honestly, striving for a completely stress-free life is a biological dead end.
Wait, really? A dead end?
Yes, stress in manageable doses is a mechanical requirement for human adaptation and growth. Think about exercise. That's a stressor.
Right, you tear the muscle to build it back stronger.
Exactly. So the objective in modern wellness is not the elimination of stress. That's a myth. The actual goal is the expansion of your recovery capacity.
Okay, I love that. I look at it a lot like a car's suspension system.
Oh, that's a good way to frame it.
Yeah, like if you have a completely stiff, rigid suspension,
Yeah.
driving over even a tiny 2-inch pothole feels like a catastrophic event that might shatter your teeth.
Every bump is a crisis.
Right. But if you have a dynamic, highly engineered suspension system, you can hit a massive pothole, the shock absorbers compress, they take the impact, and they immediately rebound so the cabin stays perfectly smooth. Nervous system flexibility is that dynamic suspension.
That is the perfect mechanical analogy. A regulated nervous system is not one that never reacts. It's not this zen flatline state.
That's such a relief to hear, honestly.
Right. A healthy system is one that can spike into sympathetic arousal to handle a real challenge like a difficult conversation, a tight deadline, a literal physical threat, and then fluidly, elastically return to a baseline of calm.
It bounces back.
Yes. Dysregulation is simply a loss of that elasticity. The shock absorbers are blown out, so every bump rattles the whole frame.
So the million-dollar question. How do we actually repair the suspension? How do we build that biological elasticity without resorting to, aggressive biohacking or trying to punish our bodies into submission?
Because we definitely don't want to add more pressure to the system.
Exactly. And looking at the research, the interventions are shockingly grounded and simple. It really starts with targeting the architecture of our daily rhythms.
Because the nervous system is, at its core, a predictive machine. It thrives on circadian predictability.
Meaning routine.
Yeah, because knowing what happens next drastically reduces the brain's computational load. It doesn't have to guess. Establishing steady, reliable anchors in your day, things like viewing natural light in the morning, maintaining consistent meal times, having a predictable wind-down routine, that sends a continuous low-level signal of safety to the brainstem.
It's like whispering to your biology, we are safe, we know what's coming.
Exactly. And this naturally cascades into your sleep architecture because a hypervigilant system is flooded with cortisol, and cortisol physically blocks the brain's ability to enter deep REM sleep.
Which goes back to what we were saying earlier. You can't just lie down and expect to rest.
No, you have to actively trick the brain into feeling safe enough to lower the drawbridge. You have to set the stage.
And that requires managing the sensory environment, right?
Crucially, melatonin, the sleep hormone, cannot do its job if cortisol is occupying all the receptors. By dimming the lights, dropping the ambient temperature in your bedroom, and taking away that high-contrast optic flow of a phone screen.
The scrolling.
Right, removing the scrolling. By doing all that, you are actively facilitating parasympathetic activation. You are mechanically shifting the body from defend to repair.
It's so empowering to know it's mechanical. We can actually pull these levers.
Well, you really can.
The clinical data also highlights movement as a lever, but with the pretty major caveat, which I found fascinating.
Yes, the intensity really matters here.
Right, because if your system is already blown out and completely flooded with stress hormones, forcing yourself through a punishing, high-intensity boot camp workout is just adding biological stress on top of emotional stress.
It's the worst thing you can do for a dysregulated system. It can push you so much further into burnout.
So how should we be moving?
Movement needs to match the nervous system's current capacity. If you are in that hypervigilant, wired state, supportive movement is much more about interoception.
Interoception, that's the ability to feel the internal sensations of your body, right?
Exactly. It's tuning inward. So practices like gentle mobility work, deliberate walking, or somatic stretching. These things help process that trapped adrenaline without spiking your cortisol any further.
I read something really interesting in the research about walking, actually. Just the simple act of walking forward generates forward optic flow. And neurobiologists have found that forward optic flow naturally quiets the amygdala's threat response.
It is incredibly cool. Just the visual data of moving forward through space watching objects pass by, you acts as a biological calming mechanism.
It's like it signals to the brain that you are successfully navigating your environment rather than feeling trapped or paralyzed by it.
Precisely. You're physically proving to your brain that you aren't stuck.
But, we aren't just navigating our environments completely alone. And I think this is where the research gets deeply, deeply profound, the concept of co-regulation.
Oh, this is the most important part of the conversation, in my opinion.
I agree. We are so often told that self-care is this solitary pursuit. Taking a bath alone, meditating alone in a dark room, journaling by yourself. But our biology is undeniably social.
We are fundamentally pack animals. There's no getting around it. Our nervous systems are structurally designed to regulate through interaction with others, specifically via the vagus nerve.
Okay, what are the actual mechanics of that? Because it sounds a bit like magic. How does just sitting next to someone else actually change the physical state of my nervous system?
It relies heavily on mirror neurons and evolutionary biology. When you are in the presence of someone who is deeply grounded and calm, your middle ear muscles actually tune to the specific frequencies of human vocal prosody.
Vocal prosody, like the tone of their voice.
Yeah, the melodic, soothing rhythm of a safe, calm voice. And at the same time, your brain is continuously scanning their microexpressions. If their face is relaxed and their breathing is slow and steady, your mirror neurons process all that safety data.
And what happens then?
In real time, your heart rate variability will actually begin to synchronize with theirs. Your nervous system anchors to theirs.
Wow, that completely redefines the concept of emotional support for me. It's not just about, venting your problems to a friend over coffee. Their physical regulated presence actually acts as an external shock absorber for your own nervous system.
Exactly. Co-regulation is the biological bridge to self-regulation. So often, a dysregulated system simply cannot calm down on its own. It's stuck. It requires the anchoring presence of another regulated human being to basically remember how to find the brakes.
We lend each other our breaks.
Beautifully put. Yes, we do.
This entire perspective, it just requires a massive cultural shift in how we view ourselves and each other. We are moving away from treating all these symptoms in isolation and stepping into a space of, profound physiological empathy.
Empathy for ourselves, mostly. Understanding that your irritability or your exhaustion isn't a character flaw, it's a biological conservation mechanism. And knowing that replaces shame with curiosity.
And curiosity is an inherently regulating emotion, isn't it?
It is. When you approach your own exhaustion with clinical curiosity rather than harsh judgment, you are naturally engaging your prefrontal cortex. You are literally bringing the logical, safe part of your brain back online just by being curious about what you're feeling.
For the longest time, the only question we ever asked ourselves when faced with exhaustion was, how do I push through this? Or how do I optimize my schedule to grind harder and just ignore the fatigue?
How do I drink more coffee to survive the day?
Right. But we are finally, thankfully, abandoning that question. The conversations happening in modern wellness communities are shifting toward a much more sustainable inquiry, which is, how do I expand my capacity to recover?
It's the difference between merely trying to survive your life and actually living it. It's acknowledging that the environmental stress is always going to be there, but ensuring that your internal foundation is robust enough to absorb the impact.
It's recognizing that recovery is not a reward for productivity. Recovery is the biological prerequisite for functioning at all.
Perfectly said. You can't drive the car without gas in the tank.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive today, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought. Something to really mull over as you navigate the demands of your week.
I love
Think
this.
about your calendar right now. Just visualize it. Look at the architecture of your days. What would your life actually look like if you prioritized and scheduled your nervous system recovery with the exact same reverence, the exact same dedication, and those non-negotiable boundaries that you currently reserve for your productivity?
What if you stopped waiting for the fire to burn out and simply learned how to turn the alarm off?
Our biology is incredibly resilient, but it does require our active participation. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the mechanics of sustainable well-being, emotional balance, and learning how to structurally care for the system that spends every second of the day caring for you.
It's been a great conversation.
Take care of yourselves out there.